Good afternoon, everyone. Medyo maingay ang electric fan. Kayo, walang fan sa inyo? Yung ceiling fan? Okay. Okay ba? Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Kahit mainit. I just looked at my phone. It says that it's 35 degrees, but it feels like 40. So that's pretty hot. It's summertime. Well, we're here, so we can start. We don't know who's joining us online. When a moment ago, when I looked at the screen, there was one, and Rubelin said it was her. No, it was Rubelin herself. So, but now she said there's 5. So, and maybe by now there are more. Happy Easter to all of you. Happy Easter to everybody joining us online. This is now already our 4th hybrid style formation meeting, meaning people who are present in person and people who are present online. So I think we have most of the bugs worked out already, everything working properly. If people are not connected yet, it's just a matter of time, and I'm sure that they will be able to connect. So we can proceed with our talk number 6, or the 6th part of the 12-part series on St. Joseph. So we're going to begin with prayer, asking the intercession of Our Lady and of St. Joseph. So please stand. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Queen Mother Mary, we come before you, begging an outpouring of grace upon the whole world. Open the eyes of our hearts with your faith. Draw us deeply into the life of the Church as we ponder the mysteries of creation, redemption, and sanctification celebrated in your maternal heart. Lead us into the Eucharistic heart of your Son, to drink of the inexhaustible fountain of the divine will. We ask this through our Lord Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with the Father and the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. Prayer to St. Joseph, protector of the Anawim. Beloved St. Joseph, protector of the Anawim, watch over us day and night. Preserve us from occasions of sin, and obtain for us purity of soul and body. Grant us a spirit of sacrifice, humility, and courage, a burning love for Jesus in the Eucharist, and a tender love for Mary, our Mother. Saint Joseph, be with us living, be with us dying, and intercede for us to Jesus, our merciful Savior. Amen. O Sacred Heart of Jesus, Eucharistic Heart of Mary, Saint Joseph, Father Francis, Sister Barbara, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So good afternoon once again, and happy Easter once again. Seems to me we were more last time. Now we're fewer, but maybe more online. So welcome. We are here in the glorious octave of Easter. Alleluia. Hallelujah. The online people can't hear what you say, so you can say Alleluia all you want, and no one will be able to hear you. So this time of year, is when we're celebrating the very heart of our faith, the Paschal mystery. And it might seem like there's no room for St. Joseph in Holy Week and Easter, but after all, he was long dead by the time Jesus died and rose again from the tomb. But it's good to step back and recall the bigger picture of the role of St. Joseph and how he silently cooperates in the plan of God. He's behind the scenes. You think of the icon of Our Lady of the Liturgical Life. He's there looking over not only the birth and childhood of Jesus, but the whole mystery which is enshrined in Mary's heart, in the heart of the church. Or you can look at this icon here. Joseph is protector of the Annuim, not only when Jesus is a child, but whenever any of us, any of the poor, need his protection. So we still need his protection even in the octave of Easter. Not only that, Joseph is patron of the dying because he knows what comes after death. He knows that we are made for eternal life, and that's what we're celebrating in Easter time, is eternal life, risen life. Well, since the last time we gathered in this forum for our formation gathering, which was just 2 weeks ago, we passed through everything. We had Palm Sunday, we had Holy Week, we had the Easter Triduum, and now we're already on the 5th day of the new day of Easter, the 8th day, the unending day. Once Jesus rose from the dead and established a new creation, he doesn't have to do anything else. It is finished. He has established a new day that will never end, a life that will never end. So we only have to persevere in time, awaiting the fullness of his victory to unfold. There's an Easter hymn you might know, the strife is o'er, the battle done, now is the victor's triumph won. Well, that's true in relation to Jesus. He's victorious already. Death is defeated already. But that doesn't mean that all suffering is over. Not at all. We're very keenly aware of the suffering that has overtaken the Philippines, at least the eastern Visayas region, because of that storm Agaton. That storm happened to come right about Palm Sunday, or the day after Palm Sunday. So right in Passion Week, along comes the big storm, and the death toll is well over 200 now. They're still finding bodies, and there's still many people missing, many people injured, and they keep tabulating the losses from that storm. So obviously, even though it's Easter, suffering is not over. And then even more striking on the world scene is the war in Ukraine, which is far from over. In fact, it seems to be getting worse and worse. Pope Francis pleaded for a truce for Easter, a truce. No one paid any attention to it, apparently. So there was no truce for the Easter Day we just celebrated. But the Orthodox churches celebrate Easter next Sunday, the 24th. For us, it will be Divine Mercy Sunday, but for the Orthodox, it's Easter Sunday. So let's keep praying for peace, for the peace that comes from the risen Lord. Let's keep praying for peace in Ukraine. It's part of our responsibility, after all. Part of being like St. Joseph is to persevere in prayer and in work for peace. Okay, let's turn now. We come to the 6th talk of Pope Francis in his series of catecheses on St. Joseph. The first talk was on the environment or the culture in which Joseph lived, and how he was in the kind of the backwoods or the off the main path. Second talk was on Joseph in salvation history. We looked at the genealogies. Third talk was on Joseph as a just man and husband of Mary, his relationship with Mary especially. Fourth talk, Joseph as a man of silence. We reflected not so much on Joseph, but on the responsibility to curb our tongues. And then last time, St. Joseph, persecuted and courageous migrant. We reflected on that phenomenon of worldwide migration. So we can tell by now that these reflections of Pope Francis are not only about St. Joseph. They're really more like examples of pondering the mysteries in the heart and letting them grow. Pondering the mystery of Joseph leads us to insight into many other things that are related to the spiritual life and our life in our journey through this world. So it's as if Pope Francis is using St. Joseph as a kind of launching pad to jump into many, many other topics, or to reflect on other topics. After all, Joseph is the example of so many virtues. Today's topic is on fatherhood, especially on fatherhood. So which is very, very basic. When you're talking about St. Joseph, here we are, Catechesis on St. Joseph, number 6, St. Joseph, Jesus' foster father. Pope Francis's general audience of January 5 this year. Let's just jump into our text. Everybody has the handout. If you don't, there's some back there. Dear brothers and sisters, today we will reflect on St. Joseph as the father of Jesus. The Evangelists, Matthew and Luke, present him as the foster father of Jesus and not as his biological father. Matthew specifies this, avoiding the formula, the father of, used in the genealogy for all the ancestors of Jesus. Instead, he defines Joseph as the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who is called Christ. That's Matthew's version. Luke, on the other hand, affirms it by saying that he was Jesus' supposed father, that is, he appeared as his father. Well, I don't think we have to elaborate on this main point of this paragraph, because if we don't know that Joseph is not the biological father of Jesus, we don't know anything about Joseph at all. The two most fundamental truths about St. Joseph are, one, that he's the spouse or husband of Mary. That was especially the focus of talk number 3. And secondly, that he's not the father of her son, not biologically. He's the legal father of Jesus. But when it comes to talking about Joseph's fatherhood, or how to describe Joseph's relationship with Jesus, there is a challenge here, because no term seems to quite fit. It's such a unique case. So sometimes we might refer to him as the legal father, or the putative father, or the spiritual father, or the virginal father, or the most common traditional term is the foster father. Joseph as the foster father. Pope Francis uses this term foster father in the title of this talk and in the second sentence of this first paragraph, and then he never mentions it again. So he's saying this is the talk about Joseph as the foster father, but not really, not that specific term. It's a term, foster father is a term that we use, but it's not in the Bible. And it has its limitations. It's accurate, but it's limited. It's inadequate because foster parenting, as we understand it, is usually temporary. It's a kind of substitute, like a substitute teacher. It's a legal category. A foster parent becomes a legal guardian for a time. At least in my experience of foster parents, they become legal guardians until a better situation can be found for the children or for the child. So maybe an adoptive family. And usually the foster parents are not the first parents who have responsibility for the child. They fill in when a child is orphaned, for example, or abandoned, or maybe the parents are not competent. Maybe they're in jail or something. So that's why the foster parents step in. And very often foster children are already victims of some deep loss or trauma. Well, that doesn't fit Joseph's case. Jesus never had any other human father. He wasn't traumatized by the loss of his family or anything like that. So Jesus' relationship to Joseph is not like the typical foster child to a foster father. Anyway, the Bible is very clear that Joseph is not the biological father of Jesus, but Joseph is the real father of Jesus in every other sense of the word. Legal father, certainly, That's why Joseph is the connection to the whole line of David. And Joseph is the one who names Jesus, which is an act of authority over the child that only a father can claim. We'll get to that in a moment. So Joseph is the authority figure over Jesus' whole childhood. So it's a unique case. But Luke's way of putting this is pretty clever when he says that Jesus was the son, as was supposed, of Joseph. So he's saying Jesus was not the son of Joseph, but that everyone thought he was the son of Joseph. It's a pretty good way of saying it. If you want to do more research on this, Father Calloway, in his book that we studied last year, has a whole chapter on this, or day 13 of the 33 days is on this whole topic of the Joseph as the foster father of the Son of God. It's one of the titles in the litany to St. Joseph, foster father of the Son of God. But Father Calloway points out that in Latin, the term filii Dei nutritiae, it doesn't really mean foster father, it means nurturer of the Son of God. So maybe that will help us. Paragraph number 2. To understand the supposed or legal paternity of Joseph, it is necessary to bear in mind that in ancient times in the East, the institution of adoption was very common, more so than today. Think of the common case in Israel of the levirate, as formulated in Deuteronomy. And here's a long quote from the book of Deuteronomy. If brothers dwell together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the dead shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in to her and take her as his wife and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. And the first son whom she bears shall succeed to the name of his brother who is dead, that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. In other words, the parent, meaning the biological father of the child, is the brother-in-law, but the legal father remains the deceased, the first husband of the widow, who gives the newborn child all hereditary rights. The purpose of this law was twofold: to ensure the descendants of the deceased and the preservation of the estate. Now, I'm not sure exactly why the Holy Father spends so much time on this levirate marriage law, because it doesn't seem to have that much to do with Joseph. I think what the Pope is doing here is trying to establish one of the reasons why adoption was common in biblical times. And for sure, the Bible is very favorable to adoption. We'll get to this in a few minutes. Adoption is one of the main topics of this talk. But as far as the levirate marriages, even though the Pope says they were common, there's not that many actual cases in the Bible. I think what we run into most often, we who are following the liturgical life, is the passage in the Gospel where the Sadducees are trying to disprove the resurrection, and they say, well, what about this case? A woman who marries a man and he dies, and then she marries the brother and he dies, and there's 7 brothers and they all die and none of them have a child, and then the woman dies. You remember that passage. It's supposed to be a test case. Whose wife will she be in the resurrection? That little story or hypothetical case is based on this levirate marriage law, meaning the brother of the widow has to take the widow as his wife. It's an unusual thing, because the Bible is also clear that no one is allowed to marry the wife of his brother. But after the brother dies, he's supposed to. So it's a quick shift, and it's for the sake of the family. It's for the sake of the inheritance. It's even for the sake of the woman herself, because widows don't have any support, and if she doesn't have any children or any husband, what happens to her? So the family takes responsibility. The other probably notable one, I think I'll just mention this case of the levirate marriage, is in the case of Judah. Remember, Jacob has 12 sons. One of the sons is Judah, and Judah is the tribe from which the Messiah will come. But Judah, he has 3 sons: Onan and Shelah. And a woman marries Tamar. That's the story of Tamar. Tamar marries the first son, he dies. The second son, Onan, marries her, but he practices a form of contraception. You know that story. Withdrawal. so because he doesn't want to produce a child by the widow of his brother. So he dies. And then the third son, Shelah, well, he's too young to have a wife. So Judah says, wait a minute, wait. And then he never lets the widow marry his third son. And so she tricks him by pretending to be a prostitute, and she becomes pregnant by Judah. So, and when Judah finds out, oh, she was in the right, and she bears children, Perez and Zerah? Perez and Zerah. Anyway, Perez is the ancestor of Joseph. So Perez it's from Jacob, Judah, Perez. He's right in the genealogy. Anyway, it's this Levirate legal marriage law. As I say, I'm not sure if this is that helpful to us, but if you look at the two genealogies and you see how different they are, some people say the reason why the names are different is because there could be Levirate marriages. It could be that one man is the legal father and one is the biological father, and so it gets quite complicated very fast. Okay, let's move on. Number 3, as the official father of Jesus, Joseph exercises the right to impose a name on his son, legally recognizing him. Legally, he is the father, but not generatively. He did not beget him. And in the original, there's a space there, so I just left it in. In ancient times, the name was the compendium of a person's identity. To change one's name meant changing oneself, as in the case of Abraham, whose name God changed to Abraham, which means father of many. For, says the book of Genesis, he will be the father of a multitude of nations. The same goes for Jacob, who would be called Israel, which means he who has striven with God, because he fought with God to compel him to give him the blessing. Then there's another space, I don't know why. But above all, naming someone or something meant asserting one's authority over what was named, as Adam did when he conferred a name on all the animals. So the whole topic of biblical names and their meanings and the significance of name changes in the Bible, this is all very important. I'm not sure why the Pope went into this here, because God didn't change the name of Joseph or Mary or Jesus for that matter. God did designate and reveal the name of Jesus, the earthly name of the eternal Son of God. When the Word became flesh, he was going to be known as Jesus. That was revealed to Mary and it was revealed to Joseph. Came from the Father through the angel. Didn't come from Joseph. Number 4, Joseph already knows that a name had already been prepared for Mary's son by God. Jesus' name is given to him by his true father, God. The name Jesus, which means the Lord saves. As the angel explains, he will save his people from their sins. I think the reason why he's stressing this business about naming and names is because Joseph has authority to name his son, and that gives evidence that he is really the father, taking the father's role. If the father claims the child as his own, he claims responsibility for the child by giving the name. The relevant passage in the Bible is in Matthew chapter 1, verse 22 to 25, where he quotes the prophecy. The prophecy says the virgin will be with child and bear a son, and they shall name him Emmanuel. So that's what we expect to be the name. But then, when Joseph awoke, he did as the angel of the Lord had commanded him and took his wife into his home. He had no relations with her until she bore a son, and he named him Jesus. He didn't name him Emmanuel, but he is the fulfillment of the prophecy of Emmanuel. He named him Jesus because that name was already chosen. Actually, Joseph giving the name that was already chosen is an example of Joseph's own submission to the will of God. He's the Father, but his fatherhood is 100% at the service of the will of God. Then in the middle of paragraph number 4, there's a very sudden shift. This next sentence. He's talking about names and all this, and then he says this. This particular aspect of Joseph now enables us to reflect on fatherhood and motherhood. This launches us into the rest of the talk. And this, I believe, is very important, to think about fatherhood today. Because we live in an age of notorious orphanhood. It is curious. Our civilization is somewhat orphan, and this orphanhood can be felt. May St. Joseph help us understand how to resolve this sense of orphanhood that is so harmful to us today. Now, he says this particular aspect of Joseph enables us to reflect on fatherhood and motherhood. He's talking about Joseph taking on the role of fatherhood. And for the rest of the talk, the Pope is not going to be talking about Joseph at all. He's going to be talking about fatherhood and the contrast to fatherhood, orphanhood. So it's not about how Joseph raised Jesus or about their relationship. It's about this much more basic idea of the importance of fatherhood itself. And then the Pope says why he wants to dwell on this important topic, because we live in an age of notorious orphanhood. Our civilization is somewhat orphanhood that can be felt. And then he asks St. Joseph for help in resolving this harmful problem of orphanhood. Well, what is he talking about? I mean, we don't usually even use that word orphanhood, and we might not know what this notorious orphanhood is. We know what orphans are, of course, and there are orphans all over the world. In fact, in Ukraine right now, you see pictures of war orphans, parents gone, killed, or disappeared, and children who are sent to safety, and they're orphans. That's literally orphans. But we know orphans from many tragedies around the world. One of the biggest causes of orphanhood is the AIDS epidemic. In some countries in Africa, there are millions of children left orphaned by HIV/AIDS. But I mean, we shouldn't limit our thoughts to these children without parents. What we usually mean by orphans, because when he's talking about orphanhood, he's talking about it in a much bigger way. He's talking about this sense of fatherlessness, this both physical and social and psychological. In fact, it's a very serious sociological and social and cultural and spiritual crisis that there are no fathers, or very few men who are taking responsibility as fathers. So, aside from people who don't have, children who don't have parents, there are very many children who have parents, but their parents are not caring for them, especially the fathers. The whole phenomenon of absent fathers. Children who grow up without knowing their fathers, or who do not have any connection, real connection to their fathers, either because of divorce or separation, or in this country, the OFW phenomenon, where the father might be in another country for years, or now with artificial reproduction the way it is, sometimes children are conceived without knowing who the father even is. Okay, so, and then there's just plain old irresponsible men, or immature, emotionally unconnected men who have no way to raise their children. So this, what the Pope refers to as orphanhood, is a term for a bigger phenomenon of unconnectedness to fatherhood, and the deepest root of all is absence of God. Absence of God. The ultimate father is God. The ultimate father figure is God. So in a culture or in a society where people don't know God or don't have a living connection with God, they are rootless, and they're drifting, and they're insecure, and they're confused. They're like orphans. Even if they might even live with their parents, but if they don't know God, they still have something fundamental missing. The image Jesus uses, they're like sheep without a shepherd. Sheep without a shepherd. You think of that image. Those sheep, some of them are children of the other sheep, but none of the sheep have a shepherd. And so they're exhausted. Sheep without a shepherd. No security, no direction, no stability. That's the orphanhood that the Pope is talking about. Fatherlessness. Now, it's especially fatherlessness because most people, well, everyone has a stronger connection to mother, almost everyone, than father, because it's a biological link. You can't get away. You can't get away from it. I mean, everybody's born of a mother. Everybody. But not everybody knows who the father is. Sometimes the mother herself doesn't know. So fatherlessness is the problem. It's a very big topic. A lot of studies on this in psychology and in sociology. One of the related topics, since I have some expertise in the whole issue of ministry to people with same-sex attraction, homosexuality is almost always connected to some absence of a relationship with the father or problem in relationship with the father. Both men and women who have same-sex attraction usually have difficult relationships with their fathers. Because our mature identity is based on our relationship with our father or father figures. Our identity as young children is based on our relationship with mothers, but once we start to grow, we need to have a father to develop that more mature, a stronger sense of self. Okay, and if you know anything about the world of the LGBT, you know how much anger there is against father figures. It's really strong anger. Anger at fathers, by extension anger at men in general, by extension anger at authority figures, father figures, and that anger at father figures leads to a fatherlessness, an orphanhood. I think that's connected to the notorious orphanhood the Pope is talking about. That attitude that develops in an angry person, I don't need you, I don't need a father, I don't need God, I don't need an authority over me. It's a real resistance to something that we do need, and if we don't have it, we're orphans. Well, now the Pope asks, what's the solution to this pervasive orphanhood in the world? Well, the solution is return to a right sense of fatherhood, to an authentic understanding of parenthood. Okay, and he gets to that here in number 5, paragraph number 5. To bring a child into the world is not enough. To bring a child into the world is not enough to say that one is also their father or mother. Then he quotes from himself here. The Pope quotes from his apostolic letter, Patris Corde. Fathers are not born but made. A man does not become a father simply by bringing a child into the world, but by taking up the responsibility to care for that child. Whenever a man accepts responsibility for the life of another, in some way he becomes a father to that person. See how he's broadening the definition of fatherhood, just as he's broadened what he means by orphanhood. So, as I say, we're not talking about St. Joseph now, but we're talking about a role that Joseph took on and exemplifies very well. Fatherhood, he took responsibility for the care of the child, the way a good father does. Now, last year, or maybe it was at the end of 2020, when Pope Francis called the year of St. Joseph, and he issued this apostolic letter, Patris Corde, with the heart of a father. It was, if you remember reading it, because we did some study of it, it was all about aspects of Joseph's fatherhood. And there are 7 sections. The 7th section is where this quotation comes from. A father in the shadows. Joseph as an earthly shadow of the Heavenly Father, representative of the Heavenly Father. But the main point in this quotation is fathers are not born but made, not merely conceiving a child After all, Joseph didn't do that. That's the one thing he didn't do. But the more important dimension of fatherhood is taking up the responsibility to care for the child. So fatherhood means taking responsibility for the life of another. It's almost a definition, taking responsibility. And in a society that refuses to take responsibility, we're all orphans. We're all immature. We're like sheep without a shepherd. I think particularly, this is the Pope still in paragraph number 5, I think particularly of all those who are open to welcoming life by way of adoption, which is such a generous and beautiful, good attitude. Joseph shows us that this type of bond is not secondary, it is not second best. This kind of choice is among the highest forms of love and of fatherhood and motherhood. How many children in the world are waiting for someone to take care of them? And how many married couples want to be fathers and mothers but are unable to do so for biological reasons? Or, although they already have children, they want to share their family's affection with those who do not have it. We should not be afraid to choose the path of adoption, to take the risk of welcoming. So, adoption. This is one of Pope Francis's main topics in this talk. And he's not just talking about adopting children, because I don't think hardly anybody in the community is even in a position to do that. But he's talking about the spirit of the attitude behind adoption, this willingness to take responsibility for the life of others. Not everybody can adopt more children. I can't adopt any children. Probably most people can't. But everybody can take this risk of welcoming others, welcoming life. Now, when it comes to adoption, I said before that the Bible looks at adoption in a very positive way. It's always seen in a positive way in the Bible. Maybe you could think immediately of Moses. He's one of the most famous adopted children. He's adopted by the daughter of the Pharaoh, and it was all part of God's plan that he be adopted because he was being prepared from his birth for the role he would have as an adult. Another pretty well-known case of adoption is Queen Esther. You know the story of Queen Esther. She was orphaned, and her cousin, Mordecai, adopted her, raised her as his own child. And she became, when she became queen, she became the God-given choice or means by which the Jewish people would be saved. So Moses and Esther are kind of parallel in some ways. Now, why does the Pope bring up adoption when it comes to Joseph? Did Joseph adopt Jesus? We don't usually say that, although some people might say Joseph is the adoptive father. But he didn't adopt Jesus in the usual sense. Jesus wasn't an orphan after all. He wasn't even born yet. And he wasn't abandoned. So, but Joseph took on fully the role of the father. He took fully the responsibility of the father. So that's the attitude that the Pope is trying to emphasize here. He wants everyone to sit up and take responsibility, like Joseph. Which reminds me of a little story. Do I have a minute? I've told this story before, but it fits in here. Probably you know what I'm going to talk about. There was a poor woman who was pregnant. In fact, she was about to give birth. Very poor, illiterate woman. We knew her already. And she went to the lying-in clinic, and the clinic said, "You're premature. We can't handle your case. Go to the district hospital." Well, she didn't have any money. She didn't have any way to get to the district hospital, so she called us. And we went to find her. We had the old red van at the time. And we picked her up and we took her to the district hospital. And the district hospital said, "Oh, she's premature. We can't handle her case. She has to go to Fabelia, the expert maternity hospital down in Manila, which at that time would be hours away. And the woman's about to give birth, which she could have given birth right in the van. So we said, we're not going to be, as the driver, I didn't want to drive around traffic in Manila with a woman giving birth to a child in the back. So we took her to Perpetual, which is a private hospital. And so the first question, or one of the first questions the at the desk was, well, who's responsible for this child? And I said, I am. So, meaning I was going to pay the bill. And Sister Shirley was with us at the time, and she started laughing. She said, oh, you're the father? So, okay, the question is, who's responsible? The one who pays the bill, normally that would be the father. So anyway, that's why that story came to mind, because the Pope is talking about taking responsibility. That's what a father does. Okay, let's get back to adoption. The Pope says here at the end of paragraph 5 that we should not be afraid to choose this path of adoption, to take the risk of welcoming. Now, risk is one of the themes that always comes out when we're talking about parenthood or talking about any responsibility. There's always a risk involved when we reach out to another in love, when we welcome a child or any person. There's always a risk. The Pope's point is that it's worth it to take the risk. It's worth it. Why? Because, as he says, it's such a generous and beautiful, good attitude. It's such a good thing to do. It's worth the risk. What he's speaking about adoption itself, he really stresses this is not a second, what does he call it? Not secondary. It's not a second best kind of parenthood. It's very noble. It's one of the highest forms of love. And people who do this, not only do they provide for children, but they themselves grow in love, and they insert love into their family and into their into the society, into the culture. It has many, many beautiful effects. So yes, there are risks. But and there are always difficulties, whether the child is adopted or natural. There's always difficulties. You're all parents. It's not easy to raise children. So whether they're adopted or not isn't the issue. I remember a survey. This was done by some pro-lifers in the States. They wanted to find out why women in difficult situations of pregnant women, why they didn't give their children up for adoption, because there are so many people waiting for babies. People want to adopt children, but there's not that many children available to adopt. And they took a survey, and they said, okay, there's 3 options. When you're pregnant, you can either keep the child, raise the child yourself, you can abort the child, that's the thing that they're trying to prevent, or you can let someone else raise the child, which is in the broad category of adoption. And they found out from the young women, usually young women, very often not married or anyway, of those 3 options, keeping the child is always the one that the mother prefers. That comes naturally, but sometimes it's really impossible. So they think the next best thing is to abort the child. And the question, well, why? And they said, because the worst thing you could do to the child is give him or her up for adoption. Let someone else take the child and will suffer and not know his parents, and who knows, that child might come back to haunt me when he grows up. And all these fears of adoption is what made it hard for the pro-lifers to convince the women to give their children up for adoption. They thought it was a bad choice. So that's a misunderstanding of love. Can't blame people completely, but it's an immaturity. It's a fear. It's a misunderstanding of the value of sacrifice or of responsibility for the good of others. Okay, let's move on here. This is number 6. Today, even with orphanhood, there is a certain selfishness. He seems to be implying that since we're all orphans, you would think we would see the danger of selfishness, but we don't. The other day, I spoke about the demographic winter that exists nowadays. People do not want to have children, or just one and no more. And many couples do not have children because they do not want to, or they have just one because they do not want any more, but they have 2 dogs, 2 cats. Yes, dogs and cats take the place of children. Yes, it is funny, I understand, but it is the reality. I think he said that's funny. Probably the audience started laughing like you just did. Oh, dogs and cats take the place of children. Now, what he's trying to address here is the The opposite of the beautiful attitude of mature love, which is necessary for adoption, the opposite is the refusal to accept new life or to take responsibility. This is another aspect of the orphanhood that he mentioned. So, no children. The term demographic winter refers to the underpopulation problem which most countries are facing now. Not overpopulation, but underpopulation. Too few children. In many countries, it's really severe. I've talked about this before, so I think you know that it's not, that the myth of overpopulation is still lingering, but the facts are there are not enough children being born to sustain the future of countries and of economies. Not too long ago, there was a little controversy stirred up by that man, Elon Musk. You know Elon Musk? One of the richest men in the world. Am I saying his name right? Elon Musk. I think he's either the richest man in the world or he's one of them, and he's an inventor and an entrepreneur. Anyway, he made this point in a Twitter or an interview or whatever, that there's no overpopulation. We're in danger of a severe economic crisis as soon as we have a labor shortage because there's not enough children being born, and he was encouraging people to have more children. And naturally, the media attacked him for that because he was breaking the rules and he was not upholding the myth of overpopulation. So that was in the news not too long ago. Now, the Pope got into a controversy himself when he said this about dogs and cats taking the place of children. It really offended a lot of people, including good Catholics and people who would normally be supportive of the Pope. They got very defensive, saying, well, what's wrong with having a dog? What's wrong with having a cat or some pets? There's nothing wrong with having pets. That's not the point of the Pope here. The problem is if pets replace the children, or if people prefer pets rather than having children. So I don't think that's a very big issue here in the Philippines. But certainly in the States it's a very obvious problem. And people talk about their pets as if they are their children. Then you realize the mentality that is growing. Although I notice a number of people bring their dogs to the Mass in the parish. I don't know why. I'm sorry? Like their children. Yeah, that's what it looks like. Now I don't want to judge them. Maybe the dogs, I don't know. But I don't know why you would have to bring a dog to Mass. You just leave it at home. It's only an hour. So anyway, but it's a possible indicator that the attitude toward that dog is that they consider the dog a member of the family and our whole family goes to Mass. Because sometimes they do have children, and the children sit with the dog. I don't know, one chair for the dog, one chair for the child, the mother and the father. So. Anyway, the Pope got into trouble because there are people who can't have children or who don't have children yet, and they have pets, and they love their pets, and they felt like they were being judged by the Pope, and they said, you're being unfair to us. We've been trying to have children for 6 years. We don't have any children. Now you're judging us. So that wasn't the point of the Pope. I think you get it. The Pope is trying to identify an attitude of rejection of children, which is an attitude that fosters this notorious orphanhood. Okay, and this denial of fatherhood or motherhood diminishes us. It takes away our humanity. And in this way, civilization becomes more aged and without humanity because it loses the richness of fatherhood and motherhood. And our homeland suffers as it does not have children. Italy especially is suffering from this. It's one of the worst. Japan also. These are among the worst countries for not having children. Our homeland suffers and it does not have children. And as someone said somewhat humorously, and now that there are no children, who will pay the taxes for my pension? Who will take care of me? He laughed, but it is the truth. Okay, what happens when there are no children? Not only what happens to me, but what happens to society as a whole? Diminished humanity. Maybe people have more money because the generation that decides not to have children or that won't spend on children will have a little more money for a while. But in the long run, diminished humanity, a worse kind of poverty. Who will pay for my pension? Well, who's going to pay? Who's going to take care of the world? Who's going to love? Who's going to sacrifice? Who's going to care for others? Who's going to care for the elderly? Who's going to care for the sick? Number 7, I ask of St. Joseph the grace to awaken consciences and to think about this, about having children. Fatherhood and motherhood are the fullness of the life of a person. Think about this. It is true, there is the spiritual fatherhood of those who consecrate themselves to God and spiritual motherhood, but those who live in the world and get married have to think about having children, of giving life, because they will be the ones to shut their eyes, who will think about the future. Okay, another key point here, I put this in the reflection questions. Fatherhood and motherhood are the fullness of the life of a person. Isn't that a striking thing to say? You can underline that. Fatherhood and motherhood are the fullness of the life of a person. In other words, we are all called to be parents in some way. Every man is called to be a father. Every woman is called to be a mother in some way. How? Maybe by conceiving and bearing and raising children, but even if not that, by taking responsibility for life, by overcoming orphanhood, by taking the risk of welcoming life. And that's everybody. I think we all know people who have adopted children. There are many in the community. Or we know families that have taken in people, maybe relatives, or sometimes the children of the staff. Or there's lots of ways to absorb a life. And we know that it's never easy, but it's always a beautiful thing. It's a very inspiring thing. And it's a part of life. It's a part of life. Now, I'm talking to senior citizens here, so I'm not expecting anybody to take in children, although most of you take in your apos or are part of the support of the life of your apos, your grandchildren, your apostolate. So that is also an aspect of this taking responsibility for life, of broadening our gift of ourselves, of taking the risk. It overcomes an orphanhood in the world. So this is all about thinking more broadly about how to foster life, how to take responsibility for life. It's just part of being human, really. And also, if you cannot have children, think about adoption. It is a risk, yes. Having a child is always a risk, either naturally or by adoption. But it is riskier not to have them. Isn't that striking? It's riskier not to have them. It is riskier to deny fatherhood or to deny motherhood, be it real or spiritual. A man or a woman who does not voluntarily develop a sense of fatherhood or motherhood are lacking something fundamental, something important. Think about this, please. Again and again, he says, think about this. That's the third time. Think about this. So yes, there are risks. Love always involves risks. We might lose. It might be expensive. We may be hurt. It doesn't always work out. Adoption doesn't always work out. Natural child rearing doesn't always work out. But it's better to take the risk. He says it's better to take the risk. It's better to love than to refuse to love. It's riskier not to have them, to have children. It's the risk of losing ourselves, losing our humanity, our human dignity. Number 8, I hope that the institutions will always be prepared to help with adoptions by seriously monitoring but also simplifying the necessary procedures so that the dream of so many children who need a family and of so many couples who wish to give themselves in love can come true. You probably know how difficult it has become to adopt children. And there's good reason for that, because the problem of human trafficking, the danger of children being put in the hands of the wrong people, that had to be addressed. So there's now a lot of safeguards in place, and that's necessary, but it makes it very hard to adopt the children. So this is why he says, may institutions come up with ways to, yes, safeguard the children, but also make it easier for willing and qualified families to take children. Some time ago, I heard the testimony of a person, a doctor, important in his profession who did not have children. And along with his wife, he decided to adopt one. And when the time came, they were offered a child, and they were told, but we do not know how this child's health will progress. Perhaps he may have an illness. And he said, he had seen the child, he said, if you had asked me about this before coming, perhaps I would have said no, but I have seen him. I will take him with me. This is the longing to be an adoptive father, to be an adoptive mother too. Do not be afraid of this. Do not be afraid. He just gives an example of someone who took that risk of adopting even a child with special needs. Many families have children with special needs. Almost all, in fact, to one degree or another, whether natural or adopted. It's challenging. Yes, it's challenging. But it also becomes the avenue for the transformation of the whole family, because children with special needs draw more out of us. It's just the way it happens. The parents become better people, more loving, more selfless, more holy. Number 9, I pray that no one may feel deprived of the bond of paternal love, and may those who are afflicted with orphanhood go forward without this very unpleasant feeling. May St. Joseph protect and give his help to orphans, and may he intercede for couples who wish to have a child. Let us pray for this together. We'll pray that later as our closing prayer. Just his final point is, again, the Pope is not talking about Joseph directly, but he keeps bringing up orphanhood, and he says the solution is growth in paternal love. Orphans of whatever kind need fathers, mothers, parents. And he prays that St. Joseph will bring about this change in society. Okay, the next thing is the prayer. We'll pray that in a moment. And then he has the summary. Someone wrote a summary, which is pretty good. I think I don't have to read it. You can read it yourself. It just emphasizes some of the main points. I have here three sets of questions for reflection and sharing. The first one is not about the talk, it's about the liturgical life. I just hate to be in the middle of the octave of Easter and not have a chance to reflect on what it means for us. So the first question says, share briefly on one highlight or insight from your experience of Holy Week and the octave of Easter, the heart of the liturgical life. It's the heart of the Annuum life too, so this is not just an added thing. This is what we're doing anyway. Even if we had no time to talk about St. Joseph, we should at least be entering as well as we can into the Holy Week and Easter. So just share something that you have understood or experienced, some highlight of the last 2 weeks. Doesn't have to be long, but it's good to bring it out and express it. Okay, question 2 and 3, again, not about St. Joseph, but we ask St. Joseph to intercede for us and to guide us. Number 2 is to reflect on the problem, and number 3 is to reflect on the solution. The problem, of course, is orphanhood and the attitude behind it, and the solution is parenthood, authentic attitude of parenthood. So, number 2, we live in an age, this is a quote from the Pope, from paragraph number 4, we live in an age of notorious orphanhood. May St. Joseph help us understand how to resolve this sense of orphanhood that is so harmful to us today. Well, the question is, do you have a sense of this orphanhood? Do you have a sense what he's even talking about, orphanhood in the world, and what can you do to help resolve it? So orphanhood on one end and adoption or parenthood on the other end. Now, when it says, do you have a sense of orphanhood, you could apply that to yourself. How have you or how do you feel like an orphan? Or you could apply it to what you see and experience in the family or in the world, this sense of people living like they're orphans. That's, in other words, try to identify what the Pope is talking about here. He's not just talking about homeless children in the street. He's talking about a phenomenon in society and maybe in our own hearts. And then this question, what can you do to help resolve it, this step toward resolution of the problem really leads to question number 3. It's almost the same. What can you do? Quote from paragraph 7, fatherhood and motherhood are the fullness of the life of a person. I highlighted that a moment ago. Fatherhood and motherhood are the fullness of the life of a person. How is the Lord calling you to greater fullness of life? He's talking about fullness of life. By taking risks involved in loving others, by taking responsibility for others. So spiritual fatherhood, spiritual motherhood, it's the call of everybody because it's the call to fullness of life. It's what it means to be a human person. So how is God drawing you into this fullness with all its risks and with all its responsibilities? Okay, I hope that's clear. You can reflect on that for just a moment. After we stop the talk and stop the live stream, we can take a moment for prayer. A few announcements. I'll just shift gears here. The birthdays. We know that the birthday of committed members this month is Leah. Her birthday was Tuesday, the 19th, and Leah gets a double entry here. She's not only on the birthday list, she's also on the prayer chain. We're continuing to pray for her healing. Father Francis's birthday is this Saturday, the 23rd. We're going to have a thematic mass on Saturday. So it's simultaneous with his birthday. That's birthdays. Upcoming events, our next formation meeting, I'll be out of the country for the month of May, so I haven't spoken yet about how we're going to do this, but I think we can do one on May 19, but it has to be all online because we can't do it. Can't do hybrid style. I won't be here. But I think we can take this time slot, 2:30, and have a online formation teaching. I'll be in New Jersey at that time. Okay, I mentioned already this Saturday we have a thematic mass. It's also the last day of our novena to the Divine Mercy, the 9th day, and then the Feast of Divine Mercy is this upcoming Sunday. It's good to keep that in mind. Okay. Let's read together the concluding prayer. Please stand. We'll read together this prayer to Saint Joseph. I'll give you a blessing, and then take a moment before you break up into the sharing groups. All together. Saint Joseph, you who loved Jesus with fatherly love, be close to the many children who have no family and who long for a dad and mom. Support the couples who are unable to have children. Help them to discover, through this suffering, a greater plan. Make sure that no one lacks a home, a bond, a person to take care of him or her, and heal the selfishness of those who close themselves off from life, that they may open their hearts to love. The Lord be with you. May Almighty God bless you, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.